recording.
Good. Okay, so we have an agreement here that nobody can use more time and it's going to positively affect their grade. And so I'm going to collect the papers and grade them, and then we'll deal with those next week. Okay. All right, and if you would like, you may go back to your regular seats. All right, now. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing, and this goes for the Rutledge group also, is the Chapter 1 test is the one that's provided by Forrester. The review in your textbook and the review that we also started before we did this this short Chapter 1 quiz. All right, that's for your practice. All right, this is going to be the test. And when you take the test, this is supposed to be with no outside help, obviously. Okay. You will bring this test back in ungraded to me, and then I will grade it, and this will be your first major test grade for this class. Okay. Now again, this is relatively fair, right? It certainly does not have the extra credit problem like you just had on that quiz. Okay, so all right, now we've already been over a lot of this stuff. The things that we have not covered in vocabulary, we need to double check right now. Okay. Excuse me. What is degree talking about? This is notes. All right, the things that I did in the red, the review, that was notes that you'll need those types of skills to be able to answer some of the questions on your test. All right, you're also going to need to know what is a degree talking about. Okay, first of all, anybody know anything at all about degree when you have an expression? All right, what's it? I just heard it. What? It's the exponent. And it's the highest exponent of all of the terms, right? And so if you have just one exponent, then it will be the highest exponent, right? If you had a multiple, then you would add the two exponents of the same term, because this is actually y to the 0. Right? Y to the 0 is 1. So this has a combined exponent of 5, and these have a combined exponent of 5. And so this would be a degree 5, right? Quintic, a degree 5 monomial. Monomial, because there's only one term here, right? If I were to do this, now I have a degree 5 binomial. What happens if I do this? I have a degree 5 trinomial, right? Because the exponent is what controls the name of the degree. Okay? So, now I've also talked about terms in there. Terms are things, very simply, they are things that are added or subtracted. So how many terms do I have here? I have 3 things that are added or subtracted, so it's a trinomial. Right? Now, for terms, you have a monomial, a binomial, a trinomial, and everything above that is you use the number. Right? For degree, you actually go through 5, and everything 6 and above you would use the number. Right? And so you should have memorized that 1 is linear, 2 is quadratic, 3 is cubic, 4 is quartic, and 5 is quintic, and everything above that would be the number. Okay? All right, and the hard part is the difference between a 2 and a 4. All right, a quartic and a quadratic. And we use mainly quadratics, okay? Now, there's going to be order of operations, which should not be a problem. And then there's going to be discussions about field axioms. Okay, field axioms are what properties? KD properties. Commutative, associative, distributive, inverse, and identity. Okay? Yes. Okay? All right, now, this added to what we already talked about should have you set up for the quiz. And what are you going to do with this?
Return it to you.
You're going to do it as a test, right? And then you're going to return it, and I'll grade it, and that will go in the grade book. And I think that same thing is going to happen to Rutledge. I think that Rutledge is going to email me their test through the proctor, and then I'll grade that and return it to them. So I've got a lot of work to do this week. Okay. All right. Now let's talk while we have about a few minutes. All right. Let's talk about chapter 2. All right. Because in chapter 2, if you'll get your textbooks out, in chapter 2 we've got some things that we can look at. All right, I'd like you to turn to page 57. Page 57. Now, this is dealing with the vocabulary for domain and range. Now, what is domain?
X values.
Values of X. Sorry, what is range?
Y.
Values of Y. Now, when you're given coordinate points, the values of X and values of Y are pretty easy to find. Okay, if you're given a graph that looks something like this, the values of X are going to be where these two dashed lines, where they cross the x-axis. Right? And the values of Y, which would be the range, will be that right there. Okay? And so you can find where this, just visually with your eye, you can say, okay, this, let's say that the y-axis is way over here. Then you'd have to figure out, okay, what's this point right here, because that's the bottom point of the range. And the top point of the range is here, but unless you see the scale, you wouldn't know exactly what the number is. But that's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Right? That's understanding. And again, don't get range and domain mixed up. Right? By the way, D comes before R, right? And X comes before Y. Okay? Now, what I like to do is that, suppose I give you this point. What is the domain?
What is the what?
What's the domain? 3. That's the X value. What's the range?
5.
5. Okay, but what is this? No, it's Z. Z. And so if we were doing global positioning in this room, we would have an origin, and in that case, let's say the origin is the corner, right? Then we would go 3 steps horizontally, we would go 5 steps vertically, and then we'd go 7 that way, and we'd be out in the middle of the room someplace. And this is what's used in global positioning. Right? So this is for space. Now, how hard is that to pick up? That's not hard at all. It's just different, right? And so you started with a number line that was this way. Right? Where was 3 located? Right? And then eventually you actually could go negative, so you could go backwards, right? And once you got used to the number line and going and adding and subtracting on the number line, then you went to the coordinate plane. Coordinate plane is a flat surface. Right? And so now if I go up or I go down on the y, I'm changing the location from the origin both horizontally and vertically. Now add the z. Come out for positive and go back through the wall if I want to do negative. Either that or I set my 0 in the middle of the room so that I can go forwards and backwards as well as up and down and back and forth. Right? And so if we had a class where I wanted to try to explain this, then that's what we would do. We would have in the middle of the room this origin, and then we try to figure out where you're sitting. Right? You're sitting so many units horizontally, so many units vertically, and then so many units away from the origin into space. Yes?
You're not actually going to have to do with x.
No. No, we're not going to do that. But see, that was something that, because again, when I was doing some tutoring this morning, we got into what was called intervals. Now, intervals is algebra 3, right? It's a vocabulary word just like domain and range are. But what you do with the interval is that you begin to say, like for instance, let's say that this is 3 and this is 8. What is the interval of the domain? The interval of the domain starts with 3, ends with 8, and it uses the same parentheses as a point. Okay? Now, all right, but suppose you start here and you go all the way out this way. That starts at 8 and goes to what?
Infinity.
Infinity.
I have to turn sideways.
So that's an interval. And then the same thing would be true back here. This is 3 to negative infinity. And so these two horizontal lines break the x-axis into 3 intervals. 1, 2, 3. To move that to algebra 3, I would do this. Now, okay, in this area, if this is my x-axis, right, in this area, the range is negative. In this area, the range is positive. So over what interval is the range positive?
8.
3 to 8. Over what interval is the range negative? 8 to positive infinity and 3 to negative infinity.
Oh my God.
Big deal. Big deal, right? Now, even though you didn't know what interval was, is that hard to learn? No, it's not hard. And this leads into a whole another set of categories as far as being able to learn what this graph is saying to you and how you interpret the graph. Okay? All right, so, did I pass the test out? I did not. Here they are. Okay. So, we'll pass the test out and we are done for today. Good job, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. We tried.
I'm so nervous.